9,000 crore rupees. Honestly, it's a number so massive it's hard to even wrap your head around. But that is the staggering, mountain-sized debt left behind in the wake of India's most luxurious aviation brand. It's a number that literally shook the banking system and, really, redefined corporate failure in the country. But you have to wonder, right? How does a premium brand, backed by a massive, highly successful liquor empire, burn through that kind of cash and crash so spectacularly?
Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're conducting the forensic autopsy of Kingfisher Airlines. We're going to look past the flashy calendars, ignore the VIP lounges, and investigate exactly how a premium empire crashed straight into a legal and financial abyss. By breaking down the data and looking strictly at the operational facts, we'll uncover the true story behind all those dramatic headlines. Let's get into it.
October 2012. The empire is grounded. To really understand this downfall, we actually have to start at the bitter end. The scene in October 2012 was, well, it was incredibly grim. Picture this. You look out at the tarmac and you see 40 out of Kingfisher's 66 aircraft just sitting there, completely non-operational. No passengers, no flights, just gathering dust. The airline had completely collapsed at this point. They were canceling hundreds of flights a day and bleeding cash at a rate that was honestly unprecedented. It was the final gasp of a dying giant. So what actually delivered the fatal blow?
2008, the global financial crisis. You know, when looking for a villain here, it's super easy to just point the finger at the devastating 2008 global financial crisis. I mean, it was this massive external shock that rattled industries worldwide. And aviation, which obviously relies heavily on consumer spending, was right in the crosshairs. And this brilliantly illustrates just how immense the sheer pressure on the industry really was. Back in 2008, crude oil prices absolutely skyrocketed, hitting this terrifying peak of nearly $150 per barrel. For an airline like Kingfisher, which was already operating fuel-hungry aircraft, this sudden massive surge in operational costs was nothing short of catastrophic. But you see, oil was just one piece of a brutal, perfect storm. The macroeconomic headwinds were just fierce. First off, we saw a sharp reduction in corporate travel budgets, which was a huge deal because that was Kingfisher's primary premium market. Then you had this severe global credit crunch. Banks essentially stopped lending, which totally choked off Kingfisher's debt-fueled growth strategy. Add to that a depreciating Indian rupee against the dollar, which, by the way, made leases and spare parts way more expensive, and top it all off with incredibly high estate taxes on aviation turbine fuel. Looking at it on paper, you'd think the economy simply suffocated this debt-fueled airline. Case closed, right? But here's where we hit a fascinating red herring. Was the economy really the only culprit? Because if the 2008 financial crisis was the definitive killer of Kingfisher Airlines, how on earth do we explain its competitors? Right in the middle of that very same recession in 2009, rival airline Indigo actually posted its first ever profit. No way, right? They faced the exact same fuel prices, the exact same taxes, the exact same currency depreciation. Yet one thrived and the other died. The fatal flaw. Okay, let's dive into this. Because the true culprit wasn't hovering out there in the global economy. It was actually buried deep inside the company's own operations. To find the real reason Kingfisher collapsed, we have to look behind the scenes at a fatal internal flaw. We're talking about a series of disastrous management decisions that fundamentally broke the airline's unit economics, which basically just means the core cost and profit of running a single flight.
It really all comes down to the fleet. Kingfisher made this completely baffling decision to operate three entirely different types of aircraft. They had the Airbus A320 for their narrow-body routes, the A30 for wide-body international flights, and ATR turboprops for shorter regional hops. Indigo, on the other hand, maintained this razor-sharp strategy. They flew exactly one type of aircraft, just the A320.
This rule of three created a cascading doom of logistical nightmares. Because think about it, an A1320 is fundamentally different from an ATR or an A330. You can't just swap resources around. It's literally like trying to share parts between a Ferrari, a tractor, and a bus. It just doesn't work. So Kingfisher had to run 3 different pilot training programs, maintain 3 separate sets of maintenance protocols, stockpile 3 entirely different categories of spare parts, and invest in 3 distinct flight simulators. They essentially took their fixed expenses and just multiplied them by 3, causing an operational hemorrhage.
So the crucial point is that because Kingfisher's fleet was so heavily fragmented, they completely missed out on massive bulk discounts. Their monthly lease bill was hovering somewhere around 90 to 100 crore rupees. But Indigo, by ordering a massive block of just a single aircraft type, they pushed their monthly lease costs all the way down to just 52.5 crore rupees. That is a staggering 40% cost advantage for Indigo right out of the gate, and it was entirely because they standardized their fleet.
And the financial hemorrhage absolutely did not stop at leasing. Just to keep this fragmented fleet ready and operational, Kingfisher had to maintain 3 completely non-interchangeable spare parts inventories. The cost for that? A staggering 300 to 400 crore rupees every single year. Let that sink in. If a propeller blade broke on an ATR, they couldn't just pull a spare part from an A320. Actually, in 2010, a shortage of just ATR propeller blades grounded 5 aircraft for over a week, causing millions in lost revenue.
All this complexity trickled right down to daily ground-level mayhem. You literally had ATR turboprops mistakenly assigned to gates that were designed for A320s, which of course caused massive delays. These logistical missteps were generating 1 to 2 crore rupees in daily financial penalties. On top of that, Kingfisher was flying routes like Bangalore to Mangalore with planes that were mostly empty, well below the break-even threshold, bleeding millions a month just on single routes alone.
The simulator sinkhole. Now, let's look at the next chapter of this autopsy, a massive, largely hidden financial drain tied to pilot training. You see, before a pilot can fly a specific plane, they have to undergo rigorous, legally mandated type training on highly expensive simulators to essentially learn that specific cockpit inside out.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer waste of capital. It's staggering. Kingfisher had to buy and maintain 3 different simulators, and because they had fewer pilots per aircraft type, these machines were chronically underutilized. We're talking barely 200 hours a month each. So the total cost associated with this clunky setup ballooned to over 1,348 crore rupees. Meanwhile, Indigo, using one single highly efficient simulator running 400 hours a month, kept their costs down to 916 crore. Kingfisher was throwing away hundreds of crores for literally zero operational advantage.
Eventually, the cash just ran out, which brought the operational failure full circle. Unpaid maintenance bills meant their planes couldn't be legally certified to fly. But here's the thing. A grounded plane is a financial black hole. Even though over 60% of their fleet was grounded, Kingfisher still had to pay 5 to 10 crore rupees in monthly parking and storage fees for each aircraft. They were bleeding millions every month just to park non-functional jets on the tarmac. The final sentence. Of course, this operational collapse naturally gave way to a dramatic legal and financial fallout. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, many going completely unpaid for months, while banks and creditors frantically scrambled to recover the 9,000 crore rupees they were owed. This led to a very public, highly complex legal reckoning for the airline's owner, Vijay Mallya.
In the midst of this massive default, a crucial transaction occurred that caught the attention of India's highest judicial authority. It was discovered that a sum of $40 million was transferred by Mallya to his children. According to the Supreme Court, this specific transfer was done in direct violation of the court's restraint orders regarding his assets. Let's move to this timeline and see how this builds over the next decade. In October 2012, Flyl operations fully collapsed. 4 years later, facing mounting legal action from Indian banks and regulators, Vijay Mallya left India for the UK in March 2016. This initiated a years-long extradition battle, which ultimately culminated in a definitive ruling from the Supreme Court of India in July 2022 regarding those contempt charges.
We are reporting strictly on the facts of that July 2022 verdict. The Supreme Court sentenced Mallya to 4 months in jail for contempt and imposed a 2,000 rupee fine. Crucially, the court ordered him to deposit the $40 million, along with interest, within 4 weeks, directing authorities to initiate attachment proceedings if he defaulted. The court also noted that, according to the Ministry of External Affairs, Mallya had exhausted all avenues for appeal against his extradition in the UK.
Looking back at all the data we've covered, the source material offers a rather sobering summation of this entire autopsy. It suggests that, quote, his true business was always liquor. The airline, just an accessory to uphold the flamboyant image of the king of good times. It seems the operational reality, the maintenance, the fleet standardization, the grueling daily logistics, was completely overshadowed by a PR vehicle for a luxury brand.
Which brings us to our final takeaway. We've seen exactly how the lack of a standardized fleet, compounded by massive maintenance overheads and underutilized simulators, mathematically doomed Kingfisher against leaner competitors who faced the exact same economy.
So I leave you with this to ponder. In the world of business, when does the pursuit of an uncompromising luxury image cross the line to become a vanity project that inevitably sinks the empire? Thanks so much for exploring this explainer with us today.